morning, everyone. I haven't the faintest idea what I'm supposed to say. Gilding the lily, after what you've heard, all about what happens at Camp Extreme. What is there to add? You know, Mushke is nachas, as is every graduate. You know, I've spent my career in psychiatry, for whatever reason it is, working with addiction, primarily drug addiction, alcohol addiction. And I've seen many young people from all kinds of homes. We talk about kids who come from homes where there's abuse and neglect and whatever. I've seen kids come from purportedly excellent homes, and for whatever reason is, go off the derech and get into self-destructive behavior. But there's such nachas in seeing people recover. On my previous visit to Yerushalayim, I went down to the Kotel and going through, taking my stuff out to maybe go through the screening, right? The guy who was doing the screening was one of my graduates. And I looked at him and I said, "And they gave you a gun?" What kind of nachas it is to see a person being trusted, right, having position of responsibility and self-respect and authority. So just a couple of things that I want to share with you. And essentially, it's nothing that you haven't heard. I'm just re-emphasizing what has been said. You know, I was trained in psychiatry with a lot of Freudian ideas, with the emphasis on how did this person get to be and what happened in her childhood and his childhood and whatever, etc. And there's so many theories as to why a person turns out to be positive or negative. These theories may be true, but eventually, when I got into the addiction field, I threw all the theories away. And the reason for that is that if your house was chas v'shalom on fire, and the fire department comes, and instead of pouring water on the fire, they're running around looking where the fire started. What was the cause of it? So when you're worried about what the cause of it, put the fire out. Right? Who cares what the cause of what? After everything is over, you want to go investigate the cause, fine. But right now, put the fire out. And I sometimes have some differences with some of my colleagues and some therapists who, instead of putting the fire out, are looking around for what causes it. I don't know what causes the problems with these. Obviously, if there's been abuse in the family and beatings and neglect and whatever, whether at home or in the educational institutions, obviously that's going to cause trouble. But that's not what I can focus on. And I'll tell you what I think the strength of Project Extreme is. It comes into one word over here where it says warm, caring. So let me take a little incident that happened many years ago at Gateway Institute in Pittsburgh. I took a couple out of jail, young Jewish couple. They were severe drug addicts. And the husband finished his program a little bit first, and the wife was still in treatment. And the wife's therapist comes over and says to me, you know, she's due for discharge next week, and there's no way that she can make it. If she goes back, she'll be on the street, she'll be back in drugs within 10 minutes. We have to get her to a halfway house. But she doesn't want to go. I said, look, tell her she's here on probation. I took her out of jail on probation. Right? If she doesn't follow our program, she goes back to jail. And on Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, we used to have a meeting of everybody in the Institute, except for the switchboard operator. We used to call it the bus stop meeting. Why bus stop? Because the bus stop is where you have 200 people, each one going their own way. Right? And so I say, what are we here, a bus stop? Everybody's going their own way, right, with no kind of communal responsibility. At the bus stop meeting, the residents were able to bring up their gripes. And everybody had a gripe of some sort. So after listening to the gripes of the patients, and finally the last gripe was over, and the chief therapist who was leading the group said, well, we've had all our gripes now. Everybody happy now? This young woman's therapist says, no, I'm not happy. And I can't take this anymore. And if this is the way it's going to be, I'm going to leave. And she starts crying. And I said, hey, what's the problem? And she said, it's because of Yvonne. She refuses to go to a halfway house, and I put all my guts into her. And if she's going to go out in the street, she's going to be back and drunk, and she may be dead with me before the week is over. And I can't tolerate this. What happens is, Yvonne gets up and goes across the room and sits down next to her therapist, who's crying, and puts her arm around her. And you saw the switch in roles, right? Where she was now comforting her therapist, right? And the other patients started saying, well, Yvonne, why don't you go to, I'm not going to go to a damn halfway house. Yeah. But if you don't go to halfway house, you'll go to jail. I'll go to jail, but I won't go to halfway house. And she's carrying on, and the therapist is sitting there crying. Anyway, this went on for about, all of us were wringing wet by the time this was over. 2 days later, the therapist comes over to me, and she says, I think Yvonne can make it as an outpatient. I said, what changed? She said, something happened the other day. And I think that Yvonne, what happened was that for Yvonne, this was the first time in her life that she saw that somebody genuinely cared about her. She had never had that experience. Now, I don't know whether she's had abusive parents or neglected parents, but even parents who are not abused and neglected somehow don't get that idea of genuinely caring across. So, I don't know what the dynamics are of young boys or young girls who go up to there. There can be a million different reasons. Okay? But the therapy is only one thing. Okay? The therapy is caring. And you can't put it on. It can't be an external act. There has to be a genuine feeling because these kids can feel it. And that's what happens at Project Extreme. The kids feel that they're there for them. Somebody is genuinely caring about them. And I want to tell you another little story. Back in 1990, I started off a little project in Israel, which unfortunately is defunct now. But it was to take convicts out of jail who were drug addicted and who were in jail because of drug-related crimes, and try to rehabilitate them, and to try to show the government that if you put your money into rehabilitation, you'll do better than putting into prison. So I started off this little project in Beersheba, and the first group comes in, 8 guys, all ex-drug addicts, ex-convicts, not ex-drug addicts, but ex-convicts. And I started giving them my spiel about self-esteem, because that's all I know. And that if you had a good feeling about yourself, then you wouldn't do anything self-destructive. And whatever self-destructive behavior a person has, it's because he doesn't feel that there's anything good enough about him to say. And while I'm giving this Musa speech, oh, by the way, remind me where I was because I'll forget. I do have to give an addendum to the story of the Visor Salant. With the story of the shoemaker. Right? And the Visor Salant said, there was something that the Visor Salant said, And he said, it's an amazing statement. He said, when that incident happened, up in Gan Eden, they took out all the Rabbonim for several generations who were in Gan Eden, and they put them to judgment for never giving the people the kind of Musa that would have prevented such a disaster from happening. An enormous statement, right? They're taking tzaddikim out of Gan Eden and putting them back into judgment because they were at fault for allowing such a kind of disaster to occur. At any rate, so I'm giving this spiel about self-esteem, and this one guy, Yoram, interrupts me, and he says, how are you telling me that I should have self-esteem? From where? I'm 34 years old. 16 of those 34 years have been spent in jails. I've been sent to jail after 8 different times. And when I come out of jail, nobody gives me a job. And nobody's gonna hire me. And why should they hire me with my prison record? And when the social worker calls and tells my family that I'm going to be released in 3 months, they go bananas. They don't want me out of jail. I'm a burden to them. I'm an embarrassment to them. They'd rather I'd be dead. So where should I get self-esteem from? Baruch Hashem, that Hashem gave me an idea. And I said to him, Yoram, have you ever walked by a jewelry store? Have you seen displays of gorgeous diamonds in the window? These diamonds can be worth hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, beautiful, glistening, scintillating. You have any idea what they looked like when they came out of the diamond mine? They looked like, have you ever seen a raw, uncut diamond? It looks like a piece of dirty glass. And if you didn't know better, you throw it in the trash can. But fortunately, there's a knave in there who sits there by the diamond mine, and who knows which is a worthless piece of glass and which has a gem. And so he takes this dirty piece of glass and he says, oh, wow. I said, what, oh, wow? What are you excited about? I said, there's a gem in here. I said, what are you doing with a gem in here? Throw it away. It's a dirty piece of glass. Wait till you see. He sends it to the processing plant, and out comes this beautiful 10-carat diamond worth $4 million. I says, Yoram, how can anybody take a dirty piece of glass and put such beauty into it? Nobody has that kind of magic. You see, that beauty was always there. It's been laying in the ground for thousands of years and it's been covered with crud, right? But the beauty is under there. So, what the processing plant does is cleans it up, gets rid of the outside crud, and exposes the beauty. I said, Yoram, I don't know anything about diamonds, but I know something about nishomas. You have a beautiful nishoma inside of you. You have a diamond inside of you. Now, for 34 years, it's been covered with all kinds of crud. But if you stay with us, we'll expose the diamond. You want to stay. Stayed with us for 4 months. And after 4 months, we got him into a halfway house for another 8 months. And then when he got out, he got himself a little job. He got himself a little apartment. And one day, the woman who was the administrator of the halfway house gets a call from the family. Their elderly mother died, and she left them the whole apartment of furniture, and they have no use for it. So they heard that the halfway house is going to expand. They want to donate the furniture to the halfway house. She calls up Yoram, and she says, Yoram, we got this gift of furniture, but I have no way of getting it here. So Yoram says, no problem. I'll get a truck and I'll bring this stuff over. 2 days later, he calls up Annette and he says, Annette, I've got the truck, I'm at the apartment. Chaval, it's a waste of time to put this junk on the truck. It's all dilapidated, so we can't use it. He says, Yoram, I don't want to disappoint the family. Do me a favor, put the stuff on the truck and bring it over. We'll see, maybe some things we can salvage for us. Good. So Yoram loads all this junk, dilapidated furniture on the truck, and drives it over to the halfway house. The halfway house is on the border of Tel Aviv Yafo on the 2nd floor, and he's schlepping all this junk up the stairs. And as he's schlepping up this old sofa on the stairs, an envelope falls out. 5,000 shkalim was hidden in the sofa. Yoram used to steal a purse for 10 shekels. he'd break into a house, okay, for 20 shekels. Here he's got 5,000 shekalim and nobody in the world knows of its existence. I don't want to be put to the temptation. What would anybody do? Finders keepers. Okay? Put the money in your pocket and walk off. Yoram calls Annette, and he says, Annette, I found an envelope in the sofa with 5,000 shekalim. She said, Yoram, that's their mother's money. Belongs to the family. Call the family. They called the family, and the family said, thank you for telling us. Please give the money to the halfway house, Lizzie Cologne, as a memoriam for our mother. Okay. A few months later, I was back in Israel. They had a Chanukah Tabayas for the renovated halfway house. And Yoram is there, and that's when Annette tells me the story about Yoram. So I go over to Yoram and I said, Yoram, do you remember when we first met? And I told you there was a diamond inside of you? I said, Yoram, a person who never took a nickel of anybody else's, when he finds an envelope with 5,000 shekalim and nobody knows that it exists, puts it in his pocket and walks away. And with your background, with what you did for most of your life, right, and you were able to turn that money in, that's the diamond inside of you that I was talking about. Okay. Next visit to Israel, I get a call from Annette, and it says, Dr. Twerski, you have to come down to the halfway house. I said, Annette, Tel Aviv Yafo is not one of my favorite visiting places. You know, Yerushalayim, Tzfaz, Tvelia, I got nothing to look for. No, you've got to come. So I go up to the halfway house, and she shows me on the front, there's a plaque donated by Yoram, a bronze plaque saying, Mifal Leletishat Yahalomim. This is the plant for processing diamonds. I still have that now in my home in Katamon. And Mifal, in my head, it reminded me, Mifal Leletishat Yahalomim. Yoram was a diamond, but he didn't know it. Our kids are diamonds. I don't know what went wrong with them. I have no idea what the factors are. But I don't think that that's important. That's important for psychological studies, maybe for prevention, right? Maybe to teach people how to do better parenting, maybe to help the yeshivas with deal better with the problem students. But when the kid is in trouble, when the kid is off the derech, when the kid is on the street, whether he's using drugs or other self-destructive behavior, right? How it got there, how it got to be is not important. What happens at that point is provide the care, provide the warmth, what you heard about, the unconditional feeling. And you know something? These kids don't believe that you can care for them. Nobody has ever cared for them. So what they'll do is they'll test you. And they'll kick you. You really love me? Okay? Bam! You still love me? Okay? If you pass the test, oh, you love me enough to be able to withstand the kick, right? How about if I spit in your face? So they do that. And the therapist has to be able to take it and know where it's coming from. And eventually the young man and young woman gets the message, they really care. And that's the moment of truth. Very difficult to know when that can happen. It may happen at the end of the first month, it may not happen until 8 months later. And you have to have the patience of a saint to be able to work with these kids and to be able to get all the tests, to pass all through the tests and the trials that they give you, to get them to believe that you really care for them. You know, Hasidus, we always go back to what the Baal Shem Tov said. Someday a person approached the Baal Shem Tov and he has a problem with his child. And the Baal Shem Tov said, give him extra love. He needs it more than all the others. And the Baal Shem Tov said, I wish that I could have the love for the greatest tzaddik that Hashem has for the worst Rasha. That's what the Baal Shem Tov taught. And this is really what the essence of Yiddishkeit is. Now, I don't want to knock rituals. But unless we back up our rituals with true feeling and true midos, we're going to lose our kids. I had a terrible thought the other night. I counted tefillah. And I said, today is 24 days, which is 3 weeks plus 3 days. And then I thought, so what? So what? So it is 30 days. So what? And I suggested to the group that what I want you to do after you count Sfira is to read a page of Mesilas Yesharim. In order to do a mitzvah, it's very interesting that Rabbi Akiva said that the all-encompassing rule in the Torah is Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you love another person like yourself. So one of the Balamusa made this tremendous point. The all-encompassing rule that includes all the other 613 mitzvahs, they all are related to Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So for example, if you see a category, food, and it lists 20 different things, you know it's listing 20 different foods. Everything under that category must be a food. You don't have spark plugs in there. Okay? Spark plugs don't belong under the category of food. If the overall rule of Yiddishkeit is Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, okay, then every mitzvah must be related to Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And if after you put on film you don't have greater ahavas yisrael than you did before, then you didn't do the tefillin right. And if after saying Sfira you don't have a greater ahavas yisrael than you had 5 minutes before, then you missed the boat. That's what Yiddishkeit is about. Yiddishkeit is about Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And we're talking, do these kids become frum? And you're right. We want them to become healthy. Somebody once asked them, the Baal Shem Tov, how can you get to love Hashem? You can't see him, you can't touch him. So the Baal Shem says, don't worry about Ahavas Hashem. You work on Ahavas Yisrael, and Ahavas Hashem will come automatically. Yeah, some of these kids go back to being frum when they feel that they are loved. And that's what Practical Stream does. So you see, you're dealing with people of nefesh. Every child that can be helped is, let alone it's a diamond. It's more than a diamond, it's an neshama. And there's no comparison of the value of a diamond to the value of a neshama. That child is a future father and a future mother. And that child with recovery will be a parent, a father and a mother who will have a better chance of bringing up children with a feeling of caring and a feeling of love and a feeling of Yiddishkeit. So that's what we're here for. We're here to enable Project Extreme to grow, to be able to continue its work, to be able to reach out to even more than it's doing now. But obviously, there's no free lunch. That doesn't come by easy. So that's where your role comes in. And as you do that, you become a partner in this enormous the people of nefesh, this enormous help of young people. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless you with hatzlacha, long life, good health, and all that you desire. From the Shabbos, sleep from the table, all that you desire for your good. And may Hashem give you hatzlacha in everything that you do.